All right, today's conversation is with our friend Alexandria. And Alexandria is somebody we met randomly at a trailhead in Bend, Oregon last summer. And she had a really cool camper and a really cute dog. And we just said hi.
Yeah, well, she actually said hi to us.
Oh, yeah,
and
she did.
Because I was being that introverted self, I was kind of like tiptoe. It was a week after we had bought our truck that we're currently in, and so we're just kind of taking it easy. And I'm trying to get some work, and I think we were actually filming or getting ready to film a podcast too. And she's like, "Hey, nice to meet you." And then that's just how the relationship started. And since then, we followed her journey, and it's been really fun to watch. And I think, and I know that you guys are going to enjoy this conversation because she's got some really good insight on what it's like to be a female solo traveler. And she's been able to do this thing for 2 years, and she's still trucking along, and it's pretty cool.
She's been to Baja alone in Mexico. She's traveled all across the U.S. with her dog. I mean, she's talked to us about safety, content creation, traveling in general, switching from a government job to self-employed. I mean, all sorts of things that apply to people who want to hit the road.
Hey, if this is your first time here, maybe you don't have a clue who we are. I'm Chris.
I'm Sarah.
And this is What No One Tells You. We are travel vloggers, content creators, whatever you want to call us. And a lot of times we like to talk about travel and our travel here on the podcast and our friends' travels as well. There's a whole plethora of things that we could talk to you about. But right now, why don't you just tell us who you are, where you're at, what you do, your life's mission, all of that good stuff.
Okay, we'll start easy, yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Alexandria, and I am currently sitting in my truck camper. I'm about to actually hit a year in the truck camper itself, which is really exciting. And it'll be about 2.5 years total on the road between various rigs. And everyone always asks, this is my favorite vehicle of choice. And right now I'm out in Colorado, where it is still much colder than where you are in Baja.
We just missed each other too. I feel like we need to say that because you were in Baja and we were in Colorado, and then somewhere we missed each other. But we have crossed paths before.
Yeah,
we actually met briefly in Bend.
Last
summer.
Yeah, and it was like literally the week after we had purchased this truck, and so we were still kind of like new to it, trying to figure it out, trying to figure everything out. And like you said, I think you had said that you had seen it online, and then that it was there that week or whatever. But yeah, it was cool that we were able to like cross paths and say hi for that brief moment.
Yeah, it actually, your rig stood out to me, because can we talk about that first? Because you have a really unique one, and I feel like, I don't know how you managed to snag it, but you have a Bigfoot truck camper, but if I'm not mistaken, it's the one that fits into like a smaller truck bed, so it's like that ideal perfect size that you can't find. Is that right? Is that the one you have?
It is, yeah. It's called the Bigfoot C611, and likewise, it was really just fate, destiny, if you believe in that. I had been in a van first and then a bus after that, trying to go the budget-friendly route, stay on the road longer. And of course, it's a school bus. It broke down all the time. So I was actually in that same parking lot, that same like trailhead parking lot, when I sold my bus, signed over the bill of sale, and walked back to the rig that I was borrowing temporarily, opened my laptop, and this camper that I'd been looking for months was posted like 5 minutes prior. And I put down a deposit literally that hour, and then flew to Minnesota 3 weeks later to go pick it up.
Oh my gosh, how cool.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
That's so cool. Yeah, those are so hard. We looked for one of those actually, and after a while we just kind of gave up because it was so hard to find.
So do you have a lot of people come up to you and be like, can I buy your truck? Or, like, do they want it? Like, if people who know it, they know it, right?
Yeah, I actually have a short list in my phone of contact information for people who said that they're interested. And the other day, actually, up here in Colorado, somebody, when I was in the City Market grocery store, left a note on my windshield and said, I've been looking for this camper forever. Here's my phone number. If you ever sell it, let me know. So, yeah, it happens a lot.
So you've got like a little bar of gold that you're traveling with all around the country. Yeah. So
yeah, I'm just really grateful that I love it. I mean, at this time, no plans to sell, but if I do, I mean, get in line, I guess. Unfortunately, there's a whole list of people who really want it.
It's like the perfect camper. So for people who are listening and they may not be familiar with what that is, could you explain what it is? Because I know a lot of people are familiar with like van life and bus life, but yours is something different, but I think it's ideal. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, totally. It is different enough where if I say van by accident, people get really upset because it's not a van.
We
Even
do
though
the
the
same thing with
lifestyle
ours.
is very similar.
Yeah.
Um, people don't seem to understand, but yeah, it is different and it is unique. And as I mentioned, I've done, I guess, 3 iterations now of living on the road, this being the third. And it is very different from the other 2 experiences, just in my capability and my comfort level on the road, as well as it being a Toyota. I feel much safer in a more reliable vehicle comparative to the past 2 as well. But essentially, what it is, I'm in a first gen Tundra, so it's a 2006 for anyone who knows Toyotas. And a lot of people are wondering why I went with such an old model and not a newer truck. One was budget, 2 is reliability. The 4.7 V8, which is the engine in this truck, is known for being one of the most reliable. And after the school bus, that was a top priority of mine. And because of that, it being older and also the 6.5 foot half ton, it's not, a massive Ram or Ford. I was really conscious of the amount of weight that I could put in the back. And so that left me with kind of 2 different choices. I could go with something like a 4-wheel camper, the pop-up ones, or like a Palomino, which people are probably pretty familiar with, or I could go with something that was hard-sided. And when I got to camp, it's just already up. And that wasn't necessarily a huge priority for me, but what was storage and living space because I also have a dog on the road. And so having the ability to just pull into camp and be done and not have to set something up, and also having some above height storage as well as better 4-season capability is what made me choose this camper. And as you were mentioning, the Bigfoot, this especially like the 611 is what it's called, but it fits in a 6.5 foot bed, is really rare and sought after because of its weight. It's just over 1,000 pounds dry, which is insane compared to most truck campers.
So light. Yeah.
Yeah, and it also is very portable. And so I don't have something hanging off the back that's then limiting where I can go, which again was a priority of mine. I didn't want a super capable truck and then a massive land yacht that then didn't allow me to go certain places.
For sure. Yeah. You've been some incredible places.
Yeah.
I mean, you go ahead.
No, okay.
I was going to interrupt.
Well, like, let's get into that. Let's get all right. So we got into the nitty gritty of the truck stuff, and that's great. But I feel like the truck is more of a tool for you to go to these cool places. But let's back up before that. Like, why did you even get into this nomadic lifestyle? Like you said, you started off in a bus and then you went to a van, right?
Van then bus.
Van then bus, or well, yeah. Let's get. But why did you do this?
Yeah, I mean, if we want to go all the way back, it's Subaru Outback RAV4 that I had when I was younger that I would take trips in that really got me interested in this. But yeah, the van was first, then the bus. I had a high roof Ford Transit. It was middle of the pandemic when everyone was getting into it, right before prices skyrocketed. So I was able to get like a 0% loan basically, which nowadays unheard of. And yeah, I could finance something with the remote job that I had working for the government and just a very different lifestyle that I'm living now, gratefully. I'm super happy with where I ended up, but it was definitely a result of a couple of choices that I made along the way. And so, yeah, being in that van was awesome, but I chose to move away from it when they asked us to come back to the office. And I had a 6-month-old puppy. I had a new love for the road, and I thought, gosh, I cannot live with a dog in San Francisco full time, nor do I want to. And so with that, I decided to sell the van and pay all of my debts off and buy the bus in cash. So that was kind of that transition there. And again, glad that I did it, but life looks very different now. Thankfully, I'm able to work remotely from the road, but now for myself. So I have a lot of flexibility. And with the advent of Starlink and other technology and the truck, I can really go pretty much anywhere I want now, knock on wood. So hopefully it stays that way for a long time.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
so cool.
We get it. Actually, our stories are very similar.
Yeah, very, very similar.
You bought the first one, sold the first one to buy the second one in cash, and then sold it to get the third one. Yeah, that's our story.
Yeah, and so
Starlink has changed it.
Oh yeah, completely. So wait, you said that now your work, like you're full time on your like building your brand, your content creation. Is that what were you doing before?
Yeah, so before I went to school for environmental science and management in California, where I'm from, and then moved pretty straight into environmental management. So I was working for an energy resource program for local government, helping small businesses transition away from fossil fuels and towards renewables, which on paper sounds really cool. But the government has so much red tape that it made the job not as fruitful as I would have loved. It felt cool. I thought that what I was doing was good, and I don't think it was bad, but it just wasn't quite as fulfilling as I thought it would be, unfortunately. And so I do work for myself now, and I don't think that this current iteration of what I'm doing is end game necessarily, but I'm really excited to at least be doing something that can support myself full time. So that way now, instead of focusing so much on the finances, I can focus on actually feeling fulfilled and giving back in a way that feels meaningful.
Can I ask you a question? And we can cut this out if you're like, I don't want to answer that. How old are you?
I'm 27.
You're 27. Okay. So you were like, what, 24 when you started the whole van life thing, I guess?
Yep.
Ish?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Because we in the past, we've gotten a lot of questions from people who were college or even high school or just like right out of college, and they're wanting to make that transition. They see it online and they like really want to live in a van or a bus or something. They want to do the whole life on the road thing. And they always ask us what our advice is, but I feel like we've never really been able to speak to that because we were a few years ahead of that. So I was like maybe 27, 28 when we bought our
21.
Yeah.
Welcome 21. So what I'm asking here is, do you have any advice for people who are interested in this lifestyle, who are maybe at that major transition period in their life, like college-ish age, because you were kind of just out of it? What was that like? Would you recommend it?
Yeah, totally. And I apologize. My dog probably sees a chipmunk outside or something.
I love it.
Barking. That is what that is right now. I can go tell her quiet if it gets too much. But yeah, I think my biggest piece of advice, and this kind of goes across all demographics, regardless of age, but I think especially for people, if I look back on being 24, freshly out of college, no money, no savings, no idea what I wanted to do, pivotal crossroads in my life. I think what I would tell someone or tell myself in the past is to just start with what you have. So if you think you want to get into this lifestyle, there is no need, there's no requirement to have a fancy Sprinter or Transit or decked out roof raised school bus. I think starting in a Subaru, starting in a RAV4, a truck bed, whatever you have going. I have a friend who lived in a Prius for a while to try it out. I think that's the best place to start, because if you enjoy the lifestyle with that kind of bare minimum, bare bones, just getting outside, and you fall in love with that aspect of the road, not only do I think it sets you up for, I guess, just more joy on the road when you do have nice things. Like, I feel like I'm living in luxury now with a bedroom and a kitchen, but it also really lowers that barrier to entry where you can just start with a little Coleman stove and a sleeping bag and your car. And then you can figure out if you like it or not. And if you love it, great. Then look at those next things like sustaining a life on the road, or maybe upgrading a rig in the future, getting a dog, which I did. But if you don't love it, then it's just, you've collected information and you haven't gone down this path that maybe wasn't for you.
Kids will reach out to us and they're like, hey, I'm going to college and I want to live in a van while I'm at college. And we always say is like, I think that's a really bad idea, because unless you live
College is stressful enough.
College is stressful enough. And then unless you live in like more on the West Coast, like if you're going to like school on the East Coast and live in it, like you're going to live in the Cracker Barrel parking lot for most of your semester, like you're going to go back and forth. And so it's always, yeah, but I love that you said start with what you have, because a lot of people think that they have to have all the bells and whistles to even begin this journey, and they really don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I think every time with each of our rigs, we've kind of, well, I shouldn't say each of them. We've gone smaller and smaller each time. We've added certain things and taken away some things that we realize you just don't need as much as what you think you do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, speaking to like that whole Gen Z population, I guess, I think it could be a really cool way for them to save money too, to get into this lifestyle and to travel. That's how we got into it. It was affordable travel. We knew we wanted to travel, but we didn't have the money to go get 1,000 credit cards and rack up the points and fly everywhere. We weren't going to do that. So this was our point of entry of being able to travel for less expensive. I think it's a good financial move for some people if it fits their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And the Starlink thing has changed the game. And I think we've talked about this in like every episode lately, because we just go on and on about like when we started van life, we didn't have Starlink. Like we were still using like a Verizon hotspot, and now it is just.
I feel like we're the old people when we say that. Like back in my day, we had a Verizon hotspot, you know?
Yeah, we're looking really old.
Mine is in the cabinet right above my head right now, my little hotspot, just in case I ever bail on Starlink. I still have mine. And I actually only got Starlink in December, right before I went to Baja, because I knew that my hotspot wouldn't work as well, but I have to work on the road every day. So I actually waited 2.5 years to jump into the Starlink boat. But I mean, now that I have it, it would be hard to go back, I think. But it's totally doable without it, especially if you are flexible and can just like schedule your work around your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we managed, but it was certainly hard, especially in places that were remote, like Alaska. Like Alaska was so hard for us.
Yeah. I knew
Baja would be hard.
Alaska was going to be tough. I knew Alaska was going to be tough when I walked into the Starbucks in Anchorage and they still had like AT&T, like DSL, like at that one. And I'm like, oh crap, I'm going to lose my job right now. Like we're not going to get anything done.
And Izzy, you know this because you're a YouTuber. It takes forever to upload those massive files too. Like it just... we get spoiled. We're spoiled now.
Yeah, we're very spoiled.
Anyway, moving on from Starlink. This is not sponsored by Starlink.
No.
But I feel like Toyota should sponsor this episode too, because we're both Toyota people here. Go Toyota. Reliability. One day.
Hey, if you could do us a favor, look, I ask this every episode. This is Sarah's favorite part, but if you could just go to iTunes, leave us a review, maybe a rating over on Spotify. It helps creators like us make content for you. It just helps a lot.
It does. All right, let's get to the episode with She Roams Wild. So you're a single female living on the road. What is that like? I mean, we've always had each other as a crutch when we've traveled in a van, but I can't imagine are you ever scared, or is it harder? Like, what is that like? I mean, I guess with it comes freedom. So what's your personal experience?
Nuanced question for sure, a nuanced answer, I guess, because there are pros and cons to everything, especially this, right? And I am grateful to, after high school, kind of early college, on my summer breaks, got to save up money and travel for the first time. I had never really been out of the country except for one trip when I was 3 and one when I was 11 to Canada. So I had never really traveled, never left the country, and got a taste of solo travel abroad when I was like 19, 20. And I think that really instilled confidence in me, being in places with different currency, different transit, different languages by myself, not traveling with friends or family. And so that definitely gave me some legs to stand on when I got on the road, and I think makes solo travel in America, at least in the US, feel much easier, because comparatively to being in Croatia by myself, I speak the language, I understand the transit and the roads and how to get around, and I have easy access to things like insurance. So I guess that's first part, is I have an advantage in that sense. So context for what I'm about to say is I absolutely love traveling solo, and I found it very easy to find community on the road. I mean, I ran into you all in Bend in a parking lot, and I find more often than not being solo actually is a great catalyst for those types of things, because for myself personally, I'm not, and this is again just for me, but just hanging out in my camper with a partner, or with somebody that I'm traveling with. And so it really does force me to get outside, be social, and introduce myself and learn about other people if I want those relationships. And so for me, it's been a really positive thing, because again, it has forced me out of my comfort zone a lot of times and really made me an active participant in my relationships and in community. And on the other side of that, I'm definitely jealous sometimes of people who have someone to dump their toilet, or to get directions while they're driving, or, the little things that are nice about having a road trip buddy. It would probably be really nice sometimes, but I think ultimately I do really appreciate my freedom. And I think that if I were to eventually have a partner on the road or to travel with, I always joke and say they would have to have their own separate rig, because now I'm like set in my ways. I like my space. I love having my freedom, and I would never want to feel or make somebody else feel like they're dependent on me for like going to town or doing things. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, we could dive into this in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Well, let's go. I'm going to go to my negative side really quick.
He always starts with the negative.
Because I want to. Well, this is the nitty gritty of what people really want to know. Have you had any like scary moments as a solo traveler?
Like, were you feeling safe?
Yeah, or like were you feeling safe, or were because I know for the most part, maybe 90% of the time, you're like, yeah, this is great, or 95. But have you had like a small 2 to 5% that was like, yeah, this wasn't a great experience?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of one experience off the top of my head that nothing ended up happening. It was completely fine, but it was a moment where I went, I need to listen to this and I'm going to leave. And I think that is the biggest thing there is it's really important to listen to your gut, which now feels like a cliche. Everyone says it, but
But
I
it's
think it's a
true.
really easy to overlook piece of advice of like, yeah, listen to your gut. But I think honestly, a reason why I have felt so comfortable on the road 99.98% of the time is because if I don't feel good about a situation or an area, even if there's no like reason to, I just pack up and leave. And I take myself out of a situation or an environment before there's a chance for something to happen. And so, yeah, in about 2.5 years on the road, I have never had anything bad happen. I've had situations that I've decided to leave or remove myself from, but I think ultimately, um, I'm not afraid of the road because of that. And I think a lot of people, especially in the truck camper, think, well, you can't get to the front seat. How much does that play into your fear? And before getting on the road in the truck, that definitely was something that I questioned of why am I going from a bus or a van to something where now I'm like trapped in the back. But by relying on that intuition and just leaving beforehand, I just never park and get in the back of my truck if I don't feel safe enough to get out and go to the front.
Yeah, that's a huge thing we've considered too, is like having that pass through between the two, because we've always wondered like what would it be like if I was trapped in the back. But you're right, like if you're thinking about it, like don't get in the back unless you feel safe enough to get in the back. Like,
Yeah.
but it's true.
Yeah.
It comes with a certain level of fear.
It does. Yeah, and we've had our share of just like random like gut moments like that. Like
Nothing's
like,
ever happened,
no.
but we've gotten a couple close calls.
Yeah, a couple close calls, just like yeah, and it's just been just enough to like put you on the edge a little bit. And so but with that said, I would say literally nine, even here in Mexico, like people, I mean, right before we came over the border, you know how it goes. Everybody's like, be safe. Like, everybody's going to get you, blah, blah, blah. And we haven't had any experience here
No.
in Baja whatsoever. I think probably one of the worst experiences we've had was like in Vermont or Maine or
Oh
somewhere
yeah,
up there. Yeah, so
it's Vermont.
yeah,
Who would have thought in
yeah.
Vermont?
So
Yeah, no, I mean, if you play it safe, we're the same way though. Like if our gut tells us something's off, like we always kind of pull in, analyze the area, like take in, like make eye contact with people just to get a feel for it. But if our gut's even slightly off, like we'll just leave. Like it's better to leave then versus like at 2 o'clock in the morning when you feel like something's off and you're searching for another spot at 2 a.m. Like that'd be awful. We've done that, but yeah, trust your gut on that. I know you're right. People say that all the time, but I think it's saved us from some pretty bad situations too.
yeah.
Some pretty close calls.
And I think too, especially just to speak to the like solo aspect of that again, because in those moments, I would imagine you have each other to talk to and bounce things off of and kind of evaluate a situation. For me, something that's been helpful, makes me feel safer, and also just actually is a safety precaution that I do take. My parents, my lovely parents, do have my location. I have an SOS little beacon device. So if I'm for some reason completely out of service, can't set up my Starlink, whatever the situation might be, I do have a way to call for help with like a search and rescue team or authorities. And then on top of that, too, it's hard to think of, even when I was abroad in Baja, to think of a time when I didn't know of a friend on the road or a friend who was on the road who then had a house that wasn't within a couple of hours. And so I knew worst case, if I was in a situation where I had to find a new campsite at 2 a.m., it's like I knew I had a driveway or a camp that I could call a friend and go park up with them to then put myself with somebody else to feel safe, even if there maybe wasn't danger. It's like you feel shaken up, and having somebody on the road or someone in a physical location that you can go and be with and check in with also is just really nice peace of mind, if not physically, then emotionally.
I was going to mention that, like you said, as a solo traveler, you're more likely to put yourself out there to like get to know people and get to know the made a bunch of friends on the road over the last almost 6 years.
Yeah.
And it kind of has given us places like I think we're like you, where we're never more than 2 hours from somebody we know. Like we have friends all across the country that we've just connected with through this lifestyle, that they understand it too, that if I needed to call them up or send them a message on Instagram, they would probably answer and be like, yeah, I have a driveway, or I can tell you a good location to park. We've been in places where we can't find a camp spot. Like we don't feel safe about something, and we'll send a friend a message who has camped there. We're like, hey, where did you camp? Like, where did you feel safe in this place? Like there's benefits to like putting yourself out there too. I can't imagine being solo, how much harder that is.
So are you an introvert or extrovert?
You know, I've always identified as an extrovert, but I will say that now, having been on the road for a little bit and been both very solo and very in community in places like Bend, for example, kind of these hot spots, I find myself having more introverted tendencies as I get older. And I don't know if it's a getting older thing or if it's that now I feel extremely comfortable being by myself. And so I don't feel that I always have to seek out other relationships like 24/7 to feel fulfilled. So yeah, I guess interpret that how you will, but a healthy blend of both, I would say, for myself.
Yeah. So the reason I'm asking you that, like, I'm trying to like get my mind into I'm trying to get into your mindset. Like you pull like Bend, for example, or, you know, somewhere where you're at, like you pull in to a national forest, or like you see other campers or whatever. Do you immediately like jump out and be like, hello, like, you know, like I want to be friends, or like how does that look? How do you go about making the community, you know, like interacting, those first interactions with people?
Yeah, I think it depends a bit on the situation. So if I'm pulling into an area that maybe I'm really familiar with or I know people there, I'll typically park near or around them. And so in those situations, it is kind of a jump out. Hey, if I don't know you, I'm Alexandria, and just nice to meet you. Otherwise, a lot of times I will kind of park by myself, and I have a dog, which is a great social tool. If you don't have a dog on the road and you need friends, get a dog, maybe adopt a dog. Because yeah, I'll be out on walks and I'll run into people, or maybe I'll see somebody I didn't realize was there. And I think more than anything, it's like having this network or this spider web of connections where even if I don't know X person, I might know A, B, and C who know X person. So then I'm going to go get to meet that person via these other connections. And just slowly but surely, I've kind of built this web of a network, I guess, on the road that way. But when I first got out on the road, I'm thinking back to being in the van. A lot of it was actually social media. This was back 2021 when there were definitely a lot of people on the road, but kind of just pre-boom. And so I wasn't going to events. It was also middle of the pandemic, or like height of the pandemic. So I didn't have an ability to meet a lot of people there. I also didn't realize that Bend, Flagstaff, all these places were hotspots. So I didn't know where to go to meet people. So yeah, social media, I would message people who maybe I looked up to or I was inspired by. And if I saw we were in a similar area, maybe try to hang out or meet up for coffee or something, and just very slowly built, I guess, a web that way. And it's really, now that I'm thinking about it, just realizing one of the first people I met on the road, which feels like an insane thing to say, but I don't know if you guys know Linnea and Aquila.
Why is that name
The
familiar?
name's so familiar.
She does YouTube as well and has a German Shepherd.
Okay.
But yeah, very big in like the solo female world. And I had looked at her videos because she was one of the only women at the time that I could find making build videos. So I was like, well, she did it. I'm gonna do this. Like that's gonna be me. And she was one of the first people I ever met physically on the road, which again feels so crazy to like meet one of my biggest inspirations that way. But because I met her, she invited me to an event later on that year, which is how I then met like 20 people who I'm still in contact with today. So it was like that one connection led to so many others. And I find that in hindsight, at least, that's usually how it goes, is I'll meet one person who then introduces me to a bunch of other people. And now there's this whole community.
That's so cool.
The number of times that's happened with us too. I mean, it's so funny how it seems like there's 1,000, like there's so many van lifers and truck lifers or whatever you want to call them these days, but it is so connected. Like, I mean, even been in that same national forest that we met you, like one night we just like randomly ran into this couple, and they ended up being from like 30 minutes away in another small town, like right down the street from us. And then we had mutual friends, and like, it happens all the time.
It happens all the time. And then one of our followers, all of that was that same week. One of our followers reached out and they're like, hey, is this your new truck? and they
Oh,
sent us
yeah.
a YouTube link, and it was somebody else who was filming a YouTube video near us, and we were in the background, and
Our truck was in the background of the National Forest in Bend camping. They're like, we saw you guys in Bend. We're like, oh
But
no, it's such a small world.
It is such a small world. So,
But there's some positive things to that.
yeah.
So can I ask a little bit more about like the safety side of it? Because I mean, I know that's just like such a big thing that like if I were alone, I would be nervous going into it. So you said you have like an SOS device. What SOS device do you use?
Yeah, I have, it's called a Zoleo, Zoleo, and it's like a Garmin InReach, but it was the budget-friendly version, and I think it works just as well. And it allows you actually, even without service, to text from your phone. So there's an app on it, and so I can send out a message if it's not an SOS, search and rescue. I could always contact my parents. Hey, I'm okay. Here's my coordinates, kind of thing. Which again is peace of mind, not only on the road, but also like backpacking or out in the wilderness. And then on top of that, I think too, I don't have a plethora of weapons or anything in here, which I think is another common thing that people ask about. But I have things that I feel I could use in an emergency situation that I'm comfortable with that are strategically around the rig. I have never once even had to unearth them from, the bottom of the drawer, but they're there. And I think it's again, just kind of peace of mind, knowing that I have something and some way that I feel comfortable defending myself. And then also, as you've kind of heard chittering in the background today, my dog is a wonderful
Yes.
alarm.
Yes.
She sees anything at all. She hears anything. Her ears are up. She's looking outside. She has a little window actually in my door, which I love, so she can see out. And if there's anything outside, even if I haven't heard or noticed it, she does. And so I think if someone's really nervous about being on the road, having a dog that maybe is more protective or more like guard dog inclined has been really great, because I know if she's acting funky, it's like, okay, my ears are now up. I'm paying attention.
For sure.
Yeah.
Dogs are a good judge of character. They
Yeah, for
really
the
are.
most part, yeah.
Look, Kramer's over here yelping right now as we talk. I'm like, I know there's nothing happening out
There's
there. He's just
nothing.
being.
And that's the sad thing about Kramer. Once people see him, they're like, "Oh, I can take him."
But even out walking, like sometimes people will approach us, and like if Kramer acts weird, and my gut's already kind of going off, like I know to stay away from that person. Like Kramer will kind of like come between us. Like dogs are great. Kramer, anybody could take Kramer. He's like 20 pounds of fluff.
And eventually, he'll be like, "Okay, I'll go with you." So.
Give him a dental chew. He'll be your best friend.
Yeah.
But oh man.
Hey, real quick, we just wanted to say thanks for listening to What No One Tells You, and we'd love for you to join our little community. So be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Let's get back to the conversation. So you made the jump from, I want to say, like a 9 to 5, like a normal typical corporation job or whatever, or government job, and then now you're a content creator, a solo content creator. So do you have a team behind you? Are you producing every piece of content? Like what does this look like for you?
Yeah, no team. Fortunately, unfortunately, 'cause I do have full, creative license. I can do and make whatever I want, thankfully. But it feels like, yeah, you went from the 9 to 5 to now the 24/7. So,
Mm-hmm.
especially when your life becomes your business in a sense, I think it's really easy to kind of go down that hole of working all the time. And being in Baja was actually very eye-opening for me, because I was traveling with some other people for an extended period of time, which I don't normally do. And they'd constantly ask what I was doing. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go work. They're like, again? Really? Um, so yeah, I guess I didn't really realize that until recently, but I do work for myself now full time. I don't have a team, and I do produce everything that I produce, which is, yeah, a blessing and a curse in a way, but I think that overall it's been a very positive thing. It's allowed me to set my own schedule. I get to travel and create based on things that I'm really interested in, so long as, I can make a video or some compelling piece of media about it. And I'm so grateful that me 2.5 years ago, I guess, almost now, I left that job that I did.
Yeah.
You produce a lot of content. You're primarily on YouTube. Is that correct? I mean, I know you're on YouTube, but what else are you doing?
Yeah, so right now I am primarily on YouTube. I also do Patreon, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, but essentially just creating ad-free content for folks who want to support me financially a bit. So they give me $1, $5, $10 a month for this kind of exclusive ad-free content as well. And I think that really just speaks to having a diversity of income streams is so important, because sometimes one falls or something goes wrong, and having a bit of a security net in that sense, multiple streams to hold me over for a month if something goes weird, is super important. And just last night, actually, I went down the rabbit hole of Facebook, because I guess you can monetize Facebook now. So feels like a whole new world that I'm entering into, that I kind of don't want to, but also am
Yeah.
excited, I guess,
Yeah.
to get into more short form. It's an exciting world.
Yeah.
Facebook. I forget it exists. I
I,
just,
I forget it exists too.
it does
Yeah.
though. It totally does.
It does. And we know somebody, we actually met another creator, and he posts his whole like niche is like posting the inside of things. And so he'll go inside a building or inside a bench or what, I mean, with something, and like he'll just show you what's inside. And he was just saying it, like he would upload what's inside an elevator to Facebook, and the Facebook people loved it. And so like he just keeps uploading elevators to Facebook now or whatever. Like it's just interesting to hear about that stuff. So,
Each one's so different.
yeah, it is really different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have you so it's funny that you mentioned this earlier, that you're with friends and you're like, yeah, I've got to work. And so I'm guessing that the people that you were traveling with were probably not content creators, or maybe like side hustling or something like that. It wasn't their full-time gig.
Yeah, the people I was traveling with at the time are not into content. Well, one of them is not in the same way, at least. She works very standard in the sense of just 9 to 5, works for somebody else and has for a long time. And so her job was very wake up every day, go to work, log off at 3:30, because we were a little bit ahead or behind, and be done. And I think that that's different than the content creation path, in that sometimes I have something due at 7 a.m. because I'm in a different time zone, and so I'm working all throughout the night, which means I can't have a margarita on the beach with everybody. Other times I won't have anything due for a big span of time, so I have to try to manage my own schedule in that sense, because even though no one's holding me accountable, it's like you have to stay on a schedule. And I think that sometimes that can be tricky on the road, especially when you're with other people, because I mean, we're all doing something different for work, or living off of savings, or working for ourselves. And so all of our schedules are different. But I think that, again, content creation can be both blessing and a curse, in that you have all the freedom and flexibility, but if you don't take it seriously and schedule yourself, you could end up in a bind where, yeah, you're pulling an all-nighter trying to get work done, and now the rest of your schedule is super screwed up because maybe you didn't manage your time well.
Yeah. It's like you're looking into our lives right now.
There's one of
Like-
her and there's two of us.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
Yeah.
YouTube is such a commitment, and you're doing the filming and the editing and the commenting back. I mean, you're doing all of it, which is,
Yeah.
it's
yeah.
a job.
Yeah.
It's such a job. I see vloggers who do it on their own. I'm like, I don't know how you do it. Like,
Yeah, it's a grind for
It
sure.
is.
So how do you keep from like burning out? Like, or are you on the edge, or are you on the cusp of like, you know what, this may not be viable for me? Like, how do you keep yourself sane?
I think I've kind of gone back and forth between on the cusp and feeling very good about my work over the past year or so. I think especially with that pull towards short form, everything is now short form, and my lane is usually much more long form. I really love YouTube. I love the 15, 20-minute plus videos, the storytelling aspect, the editing, and just really diving into that. And so I think the times when I have felt close to burnout are the times when I've tried to do that. And then also, as you mentioned earlier, Facebook versus TikTok versus Instagram versus YouTube Shorts. They all are slightly different audiences who are interested in different things, different forms of content, and different presentations of topics. And so when I try to do all of those at once and YouTube, it does not go well. It does not go well.
Yes.
It's just, I think it's hard to do all of those for myself, at least as one person, and stay authentic without like molding myself into Facebook Alexandria and TikTok Alexandria. And so that's something that I really wanted to focus on this year, and that I am prioritizing, is how I can show up authentically on these platforms, not just long form YouTube. So that way, hopefully I can do things like increase my income and show up and, present my work on more platforms without the burnout. Because yeah, I think anybody who's ever tried it will attest to the amount of work that it can be, especially when you look at now you're working with partners, you're commenting back to people, you're trying to like actually interact with your community, not just post and leave. It can be a lot. And again, it can also be really awesome. So trying to stay in the love of it. And I think your second part to that question was, how do you not burn out? With long form, I'll speak to especially because that's where I feel like I thrive. Anybody who wants to try YouTube, I say you should totally do it. If you're interested in it, if it's a curiosity of yours, 100% you should do it. But then when they ask, how do you post every week? It's because I love editing. And I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily relate to that. A lot of people, that's their least favorite part is the editing. But for me, it's like that's where the art form really comes through. And so I love editing, and that's why I think I've lasted so long on YouTube and why I still enjoy it so much is because it started from purely just a love of putting together a story and for a long time not making a penny back from it.
Yeah.
100% agree with
That's
you.
really well said.
Yeah.
I think we actually posted a reel this week about how we love being content creators, but it takes on average like an hour for every YouTube video minute or something like that. So it's like, and that doesn't count filming and thumbnailing and commenting. And I mean, it's a full-time job just to put out one video a week.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
but
you have to love it.
But
like,
we love the
the
storytelling, the editing. Like we love that. There's something, because we know other creators who they'll film and then they'll send it off to somebody to edit. And and I'm like, the filming part is actually the least favorite part for me.
Part I like the filming. Yeah. So could you tell people, we're going to link to everything, but like, what kind of content are you producing on YouTube? Like what can people expect when they go to your channel?
Yeah, so historically it's been a lot of what I guess would be considered a vlog, although I'm not really one for the like, hi friends, today I'm going to Utah, whatever. I try to show more than I tell, and then I'll add in commentary where it's like explaining something or talking about a process or a new path that I'm going down. So yeah, vlog style there about our travels and about backpacking trips and things in the summer when I'm able to get out for those and the weather is good. And then on all the other platforms, I think I do that as well, but it's more of a like how to, because I think you have to, I don't know, break things down in a different way for short form. So on Instagram, for example, it's talking more about like, this is how much I made. This is how I quit my job. This is how I'm still traveling with my dog all of these years later. And I guess just more insight in that sense, as opposed to a weekly video that I'm putting out for more of just like my story.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
That's
actually
I love how you go about that. We've actually talked about that, like keep the short form instructional or informational, and then because we're like you, we love the long form, and as people move away from it, just like, oh.
Well, actually, like we're in a good place because it just came out literally yesterday. This report came out. It was like YouTube has surpassed Netflix in viewerships.
No way.
So people are watching YouTube more than Netflix.
What?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I'm okay with that.
So we're just everybody's
bright for us.
Yeah, the future's bright. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it has been interesting to see that kind of push and pull between short and long form. I got into YouTube, or I think I put out my first video in like April of 2020. Nothing related to travel. It was like wasting less when I was living in an apartment, like trying to do zero waste stuff. Very different than what I do now. But that felt like everyone was still doing long form, and TikTok was just kind of coming into the like what's going on here? But now I guess TikTok and other platforms are actually monetizing videos over a minute long. So it's kind of like we're going back and forth between this. What do people want? So I'm really hoping that as long as the creator stays true to themselves and what they're interested in, and you just do your craft well, that there will be an audience for that. It just might take some time.
So if people wanted to follow you, like wanted to like follow along your adventures, all that stuff, where can people find you online?
Yeah, everything is under or at She Roams Wild. Depending on the platform, there might be some dots between, like on Instagram, where someone has She Roams Wild and does not use the account, unfortunately. But if you search She Roams Wild, you'll see my face, you'll see my dog and the truck, and we're pretty easy to find.
Cool.
We'll link everything down below so people can find you and follow along. But Alexandria, thank you so much for being here. This was so fun.
So fun. Yeah, I'm really glad we got to catch up, and I'm so excited to see where y'all head in mainland. It's going to be so exciting.
Yeah, maybe we'll cross paths again soon. But for now, safe travels.
Thank you. You as well. Give Kramer some head scratches from Tara and I.
Will do. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to What No One Tells You with Chris and Sara. If you have a comment or question that you want answered on the air, be sure to send us a message to hello@chrisandsara.com, or you can call or text our phone number at 423-825-9572. Thanks for listening.